Dice Tower Tonight, episode 105.
To teach their own.
Welcome to Dice Tower Tonight, a video cast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On tonight's show, we're sick of reading rulebooks. Why can't the games themselves teach us how to play them? We'll be looking at some titles that do just that. Plus, we try out a digital implementation of an old favorite, we talk about some recent play sessions, and we answer questions from the audience live. I'm Eric Summerer, and joining me now, the Miss Frizzle of board gaming, it's Crystal Dax.
I love it. I will claim that title. I will scream it everywhere. I am yes, ridiculous dresses. Like anyone who saw me at Dice Tower Con, probably 4 or 5 years ago, saw me walking around in a dress with the Board Game Blitz logo printed all over it. Like, I am the Ms. Frizzle of board game.
The more I think about it, it's actually highly appropriate. So yes, I'm glad you approve. I worry a little bit that I'm going to throw one out there and you're going to be like, oh, thank you?
No, but I mean, I appreciate the comparisons because if nothing else, they give me more insight into your brain, which is always delightful, Eric.
Oh, Crystal, it's been wonderful to get to talk to you extracurricularly in the past couple of weeks. You were a wonderful person to step in and fill Tom's shoes in not the latest episode, not the one that posted this week with Mandy, Suzanne, and me, but last week's episode of the Dice Tower. What is that? Episode 728.
I knew it ended in an 8, and that was all I could remember in the moment.
728. Crystal sits in with me, and we chat about some games. We actually had some really nice discussions in the questions segment. Some really nice thought-provoking segments that showed up thanks to Facebook folks asking things of us. It was a great episode. If you haven't had a chance to listen, you should check it out.
Yeah, I've been really grateful. A whole lot of people have provided feedback to us, especially on Twitter, that they enjoyed the episode. And so for those of you who have listened and enjoyed it and, said something, thank you, because it means a lot.
It was great to get to hang out with you and just get more Crystal in my 2-week period.
I do really enjoy, as much as I love my normal short format in Blitz, I like to talk, and I like to be able to dive a little bit deeper into topics. And so, yeah, I think it was a really nice episode.
Yes. Well, we have the opportunity to ramble away all you want on our topic of the week coming up. We're going to talk about self-teaching games. But before we get to that, I think we need to talk about some games. And I've got a doozy. This is one that I was really excited to get to play because I've been seeing people post about it on social media, and my copy hadn't arrived yet, but Pandasaurus finally got me one of the Loop. And I just dropped a bunch of stuff because I forgot I stacked things inside the Loop. I'll get that later. It's down here. The Loop, which is a cooperative time travel game. The designers, I'm not familiar with this pair. It's Maxime Romberg and Theo Riviera, but it's from Pandasaurus Games. I really like the art style of the Loop. It's the story is that this guy, he is the evil Dr. Faux, F-A-U-X. That works on so many levels.
It really does.
He is your foe in the game. Dr. Faux is traveling through time, and he is spreading clones of himself around history and generally just messing stuff up. The board looks like this. Don't break it, don't break it, don't break it. It is a septagon, a 7-sided figure for those 7 eras of history. You've got, right by my fingers, you've got ancient history, and then clockwise it goes through medieval and Renaissance and industrial and like information age, and then the age of robots, and the end of the universe. All right there in a loop, in a circular time stream. And a bunch of these clones are going to get spread out on the board, and they have one side that says, I show up in the age of robots. But then on the other side, it says, if I go to the age of the medieval age, no, that's the early age, early history. I will create a paradox and disappear. So what you need to do is get these clones to move to particular zones. They'll show up on one zone, and you need to get them to another zone to make them disappear. If you don't clear them from the board, it makes things really nasty for you. And the way it makes it nasty for you is that every turn, this thing comes into play. This is Dr. Fo's machine. It's a neat little plastic cube tower. And you'll be presented with an area where Dr. Fo is focusing on. So it might say he's focusing on the industrial age. So you take the tower and you point it toward, now this is not on a flat table, so it's not really working, but this rotates toward the industrial age. But you'll notice that there are spouts that go on the two ages next to it. So you drop cubes in and they split. And some might go to where he's focusing, but some might go to the left or the right. And you drop 2 cubes plus the number of clones that are in that zone. So the more clones there are that you haven't gotten rid of, the nastier the cube drop is. And if you get more than 3 red cubes in a zone, it sort of outbreaks and it like creates a big time paradox, and that's not good. And if that happens 4 times, you've lost the game. Your goal overall is to complete these missions. So this one says, exterminate the duplicates. Destroy 1 clone in 6 different eras. So every time you destroy a clone in a particular zone, you put a little marker on this, and once you've completed it, you end your turn there and you've completed that job. You need to complete 4 jobs to win the game. But if I overflow a particular zone, this thing goes away. I can no longer complete that task, and it's not good for us. The way that we do all this is by using these cool little cards. This is a little bit of a deck builder, more of a sort of a tableau thing. You are drafting cards from around the different zones. There's these cool items like a cursed VHS tape, or a big roll of duct tape, or my favorite, a hoverboard on wheels. It's quite the technology. But all of these...
a skateboard.
Yes. All of these things do stuff like push clones around and get you more energy. Energy helps you to do extra stuff. You can you sort of exhaust your items, but you can use energy on the board to replenish them. And at the end of your turn, you can draft 1 piece of tech that is on the board in your particular zone, and it goes on top of your deck, so it will be the first card you draw when you refresh. So you're adding more stuff. You are creating synergy with things that work together, and eventually getting it so that you have lots of options on your turn for pushing these clones around and keeping the board clear. There are also more game modes that add extra mechanisms to the whole thing. That I've only played the basic version, which was fun as it was, and a little tricky near the end. But we managed to defeat Dr. Fo, and I'm looking forward to trying more of the more complicated game modes. I love the style. It's got a real quirkiness in the rule book. Just a cool approach to the whole thing, and it's a co-op that I think has legs. The Loop from Pandasaurus Games is a big thumbs up from me.
Okay, so I have a question, and this is not a criticism, but based on the description, the theme is time travel, but the game doesn't feel like time travel from the description. Is that an accurate statement?
It's more thematic than anything else. This could have been a tower defense sort of thing. The theme of the different items, I listed the VHS tape, that's in the information age, so all of the items sort of belong in a particular time frame, which is how all that works. But as far as them traveling through time, having any sort of causality, which is what I would look for in a time travel game, that's not really here. No.
Well, and the fact that the name of the game is The Loop, like it doesn't. None of this is criticism, but like, if I saw a game that was themed around time travel and called The Loop, I would expect something more like Time Stories than what you described. And that's not to say that what you described was bad, but
I skipped over the fact the loop refers to you resetting your items. So
Okay.
you've used these pieces of technology, and you can create a time loop by spending your energy to reset some of those things. Each of the items has a
Okay.
suit. So if you collect many things of the same suit on a particular turn, you can reset them all with one loop activation, and that makes you much more efficient. So the loop
Okay.
refers to the resetting of your items, which you need to do to be efficient enough to stay ahead of Dr. Foe.
Okay. Yeah, no, this is one that I'm definitely curious about, and I like co-op games. But I think if I had just played this one without that extra context, I might have ended up disappointed just because I think my brain would have potentially expected something different out of it. But I'm still curious and would still like to try it at some point.
Okay.
All right, Eric, I got a game to the table recently that I got in the mail from a Kickstarter. And I think I've mentioned on the show now a number of times that every single game that BoardGameTables.com has published, I have enjoyed. Every
Okay.
single one, without fail. There is only one title of theirs that I haven't played, and it showed up at the same time as their new game. I haven't played Loot of Lima yet, but I now own it. So we'll see if the trend continues. But the new one that I've gotten to play is Kabuto Sumo, and I'm gonna everybody, if you have motion sickness things, watch out. I'm gonna move my camera because this is a game that I have to show. I cannot just tell. So let's see here. Do.
Nice.
That'll work. Okay, I think.
I'm gonna make you
So
full screen for the heck of it.
okay, sure, why not? So, y'all, this is Kabuto Sumo, designed by Tony Miller. The only other game designed by Tony that I personally own is Fire in the Library, which was published by Weird Giraffe Games, which is a really good push your luck game. So I was excited to try this new one from Tony. This is a dexterity board game a la mechanism similar to coin pushers, which you would find in like an arcade or even a casino,
Cool.
where yeah, which I will admit I have always been a fan of. I know that they're ridiculous and a waste of money. Like, I'm fully aware of that, and I don't care. I love them anyway. So, the theme of this game is that you are sumo wrestling bugs who are you're trying to push your opponent out of the arena. And there's all these pieces that are on the board, and then there's this little piece here that goes along the side, and you have different characters of bugs that you can be, and each one has a special ability or multiple special abilities and special tokens that you can acquire during the course of the game. The game also comes with Junior League characters that are really good for kids or for a simpler game where there's no special abilities. It's just kind of straight coin pushing mechanisms. So on your turn of this game, what you do is you grab this air thing and set it up somewhere. You are trying to push your opponent bug character off of the board. So let's say if I was the pink bug here, I would grab a piece, line it up, and then in a straight line, push it onto the board. Then any pieces that fell off during the course of my turn go into my supply, and I can use them on future turns. You only start with a certain number of pieces. I kind of gave myself a little bit of an edge to make sure that something happened on that first push. But eventually you're just trying to get your opponent's bug off of the board or get them to run out of pieces so they can have nothing that they can push off. I adore this. I've given you the most simple of explanations of it, but like this is one of those dexterity games that you can get good at, but there's so many variables that a lot of times it's not going to be as simple as it seems because like if you try and push something on, a lot of the time the little pieces are going to move in ways that you didn't necessarily expect right now, and I swear to you, this never happens. So I'm usually like, I'll push something onto the board and then nothing will happen. But that's what happens a lot because like these are round pieces, obviously, so they don't push against each other in straight lines the way you would expect
Yeah.
flat-sided pieces to. It is so much fun. I played it 2 players. You can play it in teams or with up to 4 players, individuals as well. And there are setups in the rule book specifying like visually different setups for different scenarios. If you want to play with teams, 2 players, 3 players, the rule book is great. The components are high quality. And as I believe part of the Kickstarter campaign, I got a pack of 8 extra characters with their own special abilities and own special tokens. So I have a total of, I think, 16 different characters. And they all have unique tokens that go onto the board and do different things. Like this big giant orange one here is for the dung beetle. If he does a certain thing, he gets his dung piece, which is the biggest piece. But, like, then there's this little and it triggers an extra turn for that bug in particular. So lots of cool stuff, lots of variability in the character setups. But really, it's just a coin pusher, and that's real fun. It's unique enough that, like, it feels different than any other dexterity game in my collection. And I like dexterity games. This feels strategic and also chaotic at the same time. And that's, in my mind, where most dexterity games tend to shine. So that is Kabuto Sumo, published by Board Game Tables, designed by Tony Miller. I am a huge fan. I love it, I love it, I love it. And yeah, now I have to play Loot of Lima and see if Board Game Tables is, in fact, hitting a clean sweep with me. Although at this point, I would have to say that they probably are. Like, it's a deduction game, and I like deduction games. So I would be shocked if I don't like that one based on how much I've liked all the other games they've published.
Nice. I haven't played Kabuto Sumo, but I've played a couple that are similar. There was an old Dreimagier Spiel game called Nacht der Magier that was played. It was a glow-in-the-dark game that had a circular board like this, and you were trying to push certain pieces off, but you couldn't see what the other pieces looked like. The other ones were dark discs, and you're trying to push off the glowing discs. You needed very specific lighting conditions to make it work right, but when you did, it was very, very cool.
Kabuto Sumo goes from 2 to 4 players, and you can play it as individuals or as teams once you get up to 4 players.
Very cool. Well, let me put something in the chat here, because it's time to set up for a game. We're going to try an online version. Board Game Arena recently put up a new edition of Similo, which is a game we've played a lot here on Dice Tower tonight, and we're going to try playing it with the chat. So I just put a link in the chat. If anybody has a Board Game Arena account and would like to follow that link and join our little game, you should be able to jump in on that. There we go. Got a few people there. I've got it set up so that one of the players is going to be randomly assigned as the clue giver. I'm hoping it's not me, just for the sake of making all of this work. I'm usually the clue giver whenever we play Similo, and so while the last couple people are joining in, Similo is a cooperative guessing game where you have a grid of characters and you are giving clues using a different deck of cards or the same deck of cards that say that the thing you are trying to guess is either similar or not similar to the card that you are playing. We need 3 more players. We're going to do an 8-player game of Similo. Hopefully, I see more people moving around the table than there are folks jumping into the game. It's very simple if you are afraid of joining into this particular game. It should be a lot of fun. So there's one player who is the clue giver, and they are playing cards to either be similar or not similar to the thing that you're trying to guess. We decided to set this up so that the grid is going. Oh, here we go. All right, now who is the guesser here?
We will have to see, I think, after
all right, so
everybody clicks accept.
We're all just accepting that this is a beta game. And I'm about to share my screen.
Confucius is our clue giver.
All right, so I will bring up my my screen share so that everybody can see what we're looking at. So this is our grid of characters, and these are the ones that we're looking at. So Confucius is going to take one of their cards and play it as a clue. Confucius has been given one of these 12 characters, and they have to give a clue that amongst the 5 cards that they have that is either similar or not similar to the thing that we're trying to guess. The set of cards that we have here is fables. So these are all like story book characters. You might recognize them from Disney movies and stuff like that. The clues, however, the clue deck is all animals. So we should remember that just because someone plays an animal as a clue, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're just looking at animals. As far as that goes. So if you are one of the people playing the game, I would certainly encourage you to be paying attention to your particular screen and not necessarily the stream screen, because there's a certain amount of delay going on. But Confucius has played the beaver card to the side, which means
an otter.
An otter. Yeah, I should
and that's
wave my
another
mouse
good point.
over.
If you hover over any of the cards, it will tell you what they are and give you a tiny bit of information about them as well. So if there's anything that looks unfamiliar, everybody who's playing can do that. All right, so if our clue is not like the otter, then I would say we could probably safely eliminate the Little Mermaid.
I think the Little Mermaid is a good one. So we can see people's votes, and until you've locked in your vote, it looks like everybody's going to the Little Mermaid. I think that's not a bad idea. I will join in on the Little Mermaid, and then you have to confirm your voting.
And we don't all have to vote for the same card.
No.
You know, you can confirm your vote for whatever you want. I believe it'll just be majority rules, and I'm not sure. But it looks like we're all pretty much in agreement here. Like, that's really the only water-based card on the grid.
Yeah,
so.
I think, and it's also got sort of a bluish background, which I think is important to be looking at for these clues. So yes, again, for those who are voting, you still need to confirm your vote at the top of the screen. Looks like we've done that. We've eliminated the Little Mermaid, and we're still in the game. So we're going to get a second clue. All right, good job, team. The second round, we will have to remove 2 things from the grid. So using all of the clues that we've been given up to that point. So we're waiting for Confucius to give us a second clue. And hopefully, there we go. All right, like... Is this the big bad wolf or just the wolf? It's just a wolf.
It's just a wolf. This is over up here, though, is the big bad wolf. And yeah, I would actually like.
Yeah, I'll definitely vote for the big bad wolf as being one of them. The fox is good too, but I'm going to put Cheshire Cat as a vote just to be contrary.
Okay.
And I will confirm my vote. So this is what happens when not everyone votes unanimously. Whoever has the most votes is the one that's going to be removed. I don't know what happens in a tie.
I don't know either. That hasn't happened to me yet.
I haven't seen it yet. But it's certain. Okay, looks like we've removed these two.
Keeping on our eye on the Cheshire Cat when we don't have good information, or as much information in future rounds, it will be a good thing. I'm also curious about the 3 little pigs, only because the big bad wolf is kind of an opposite to the 3 little pigs, but they're also in the same story. So it's like, is that like or not like? So just like, I'm trying to think about that kind of stuff.
Kabuki says that the vice president has to vote if there's a tie.
Oh, I get it. It took me longer than nothing, which is.
Coralu has brought up the point that I like to vote for outliers just to be contrary. I have certainly done that. I played a couple games with Coralu in the last couple of days. So now we have a peacock, and it is like the peacock.
So I'm thinking potentially something or someone that flies.
Yep, I think Tinkerbell and Peter Pan need to stick around for now.
And I would say the Wicked Witch maybe as well, potentially.
Yep. I'm going to vote for the Cheshire Cat as one of my votes.
Yeah, I like the Cheshire Cat, and then I also,
I'll do the pigs, and I'll do.
I'm gonna vote for Jack. I don't see any similarities between Jack and the peacock, even though saying Jack and the peacock sounds a little like Jack and the Beanstalk.
A little bit. All right, I need to lock in my votes. I voted for Alice just because I don't think that matches with anything.
Yeah, and I think I want to keep the Queen of Hearts in play, specifically because a peacock is very colorful and flamboyant, and I would say the Queen of Hearts is as well. So, those are my votes.
Yeah, someone pointed out that Alice has a green background, so that might not be great.
Oh, that's true.
But I'm locked in already, so I
Yeah,
can't.
I'm already locked in as well. So we'll have to just see what happens.
I have had a couple times that if we're playing turn-based, people will vote for stuff, and then I come along and I'm like, no, 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 why did you do that? No, no, this clue matches that person exactly, and I can't do anything about it. So I like playing live a little bit better. Are we still alive?
It seems as though we
We are
are.
still alive. All right, we made it to round 4, in which we'll have to remove 4 different characters, leaving
So for
only
the
2.
record, we've already done really well. This is a hard game, and
Yeah.
Confucius just got thrown in as our clue giver, and so far has done spectacularly. So good, well done, Confucius.
Okay, so we have not
That's
an
a funny
otter.
thing to say.
Well done, Confucius.
Well done, Confucius.
Yes. Coraloo is now laughing at Jack and the Peacock. So that's how far the delay is. Let's see. Peacock and owl. So we're like
an
the owl.
So
Boy, oh boy.
okay.
I feel like Jack is out. I'm gonna get rid of the Queen of Hearts. I'm getting rid of Snow White, and then I think I'm taking the witch out too. I think Peter Pan and Tinkerbell are the ones to keep.
But so here's my only thought on that specifically. Peter Pan and Tinkerbell are incredibly similar in a lot of ways. And so if we leave them as the final 2, it could theoretically make that harder for that last clue if in fact, but again, also we don't want to eliminate the wrong one, So
I'm locking it in.
It's a bird, it flies. It's got yellow eyes. All right. I'll go for the witch. I'm not saying I think it is the witch. I'm just saying I think we're potentially painting ourselves into a difficult corner.
Yep. Oh, it was the witch! Oh, the witch!
Oh! Oh no, Confucius, that was awesome. You did great.
That was a valiant effort. We talked ourselves out of it. Just a little too much. Oh,
and Confucius
boy.
said in the chat, the last card I got would have been useful. I tried, Confucius. I tried.
Yeah, it was a good argument. But yeah, that's the new implementation of Similo. I'm hoping they're able to get some more decks in. They only have the 2 animals and fables. But it's pretty fun so far and a nice group activity. And a little bit easier to set up than my usual getting out the power grid box and lining up all the cards.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, see, the witch flies too. That's what I was saying is like they all 3 of them fly. So then we just had to figure out.
Yeah.
We should have looked at the past cards probably and seen if there were some other clues in there that we could have.
Yes, the peacock may have been, with the green background. The witch has green skin.
Yeah, that's entirely possible too.
It may have been the way to go.
I still think Confucius did great though, and that was fun. I like this implementation with the voting system. It's neat.
Yes, it works very well. Okay, we have some stuff to talk about.
We sure do, and this one is a topic that I haven't heard a whole lot. I think in any board game media, so to speak. It's not a commonly discussed topic.
Yeah. I mean, we hear a lot about how, people are sick of reading rule books and what options do they have to not do that sort of thing. And there are lots of tutorial videos and other methods of teaching, basically teaching the rule book through other media, but it's a little more rare to have a game that self-teaches, that's designed to have you basically open up the game and just go and have it teach you the rules as you play the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say it's interesting because obviously in video games, tutorials exist up and down the spectrum, from the most simple to the most complex video games. You've got, and what's interesting in comparison of video games and board games is a video game tutorial can obviously be replayed or reset, so to speak, far more easily because you just click a button and it's there. Whereas a board game tutorial can be great, right out of the box, brand new out of shrink. But then in theory, the work of having to reset the tutorial to teach future people can be a little more difficult depending on how the game lays it out. And I think some games do this
Right.
well, and other games have struggled to figure out how to do this.
Yeah, that's certainly an issue. One of the categories that I set aside to talk about are missions and scenario based or even legacy campaign games. These often try and they don't quite get all the way here, but they tend to teach more mechanisms and rules as you get farther into the scenarios. The one that I was thinking of that you jump in right away is Crossmaster Arena. These guys. And the rule book, it's pretty, this is almost the full size of the box. The reason being that you start out playing these tutorial missions. You don't even pull out the board until you get through like a good half dozen of these. And it starts out with where's the first one? That was the sixth one. Very simple. Is that the first one? The first one is just a 4x4 grid. And here's your character. Here's how you move. Here's how you take damage. Here's your attack. And it's all spelled out for you. The rules are right here. All you do is play the pages of the rulebook for the first 6 to 8 missions. And then you finally bring out the rest of the rules after you've done all of that. And you only have a little bit more to learn at that point. The issue, though, comes with when you bring in new players, do you start over again? Do you hope that enough people now know all of the rules that they can teach it more efficiently? A lot of these tutorial things can be annoying if you just want to get to the full game. If the inclination sometimes with these is I don't want to go through your tutorial missions. I want to tell me how to play the game. Just let me get into it.
Yeah, no, I would agree for sure. And I think that ability to, or that decision-making process can be similar to other things we've discussed on the show, that like, if I have to make too many decisions to play a game, I sometimes will just choose not to play that game. Like, it's the same thing with like adding in a bunch of expansions. Like, yep. I often want the process of getting a game to the table to be as simple as possible. Even if the game itself is not simple, I want getting it to the table to be simple. And tutorials or quick start guides or things like that can be beneficial, especially when the game is more complex. I grabbed a somewhat newer game from Hub Games off of my shelf, Prisma Arena, which is a kid-friendly arena battle fight game that has some quick start guides in how you can, and it also like has some very specific ways that you can play through your first scenario, and it teaches you the mechanisms within the game itself. Like, it explains what you're doing and keeps everything simple, and then later says, okay, once you're familiar with this stuff, then here's all the rest of the stuff, the advanced training that you can add in after the fact. And that did help me learn this game. So. Yep.
So that's sort of the higher level, or not high, less in depth of the game teaching you, is to have tutorial scenarios. You still need to read some of the rules here, but it starts you out in the shallow end, basically. Mm-hmm. Some folks in the chat are talking about Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion, which I have not played, but they're saying that does a really nice job of showing you how to play Gloomhaven. It sort of gradually introduces you to the mechanisms. Whereas I believe if you're playing Big Brother Gloomhaven, you're dealing with the full rulebook from the beginning, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I actually tweeted about this today, and yeah, people said that in Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion, the first 5 scenarios are all like tutorial scenarios, basically. They like take you through the first 5 to teach you the mechanics, which, considering Jaws of the Lion was intended to be an easier to get into version of Gloomhaven that was sold at Target, that makes a lot of sense, and it will make a game like Gloomhaven or its system more approachable to people who aren't quite as entrenched in the hobby as we are.
So the next level of depth, where the game takes a little bit more control, is the walkthrough, where it'll give you a rule book, but it also says, you know what, just put that aside for now. Just set up the board like this and begin here. We're going to walk you through, and this happens in video games a lot, where, you know, or the app version of board games will do this a lot too, as it teaches you how to play the game. Now, click on this and move this over here, and it runs you through the first couple of turns. And Root is one of the games that does that. You've got this 2-sided sheet that explains the first 2 turns of a 4-player game. It's got diagrams on the map, and it says the Marquez player does this, and this, and then move on to the Erie player, and they do this, and this, and the Alliance player. You don't necessarily know why you're doing all of that at the beginning, but you're just following along, and you do these things, and you say, okay, oh, I see the results of me doing that. Oh, that's interesting. And then after turn 2, you're on your own, and then you end up looking up a lot of stuff in the rule book.
Yes, that is the point that I wanted to bring up. What's interesting is I have played both Root and Oath, which is also from Leader Games, and does the same thing. It walks you through the entire first round of the game, you know, like verbatim. It says, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. But when I played Root, I was playing with experienced players, so they just taught me the game as though you would teach most games. I didn't know Root had that system as well, and I only played one game of Oath, I've played one game of both of those, and Oath is intended to be a campaign game that continues on. I liked learning Root better than I liked learning Oath, exactly for the reason you said, Eric. I think while it is really cool to have those first couple rounds laid out for you to make the decision-making process easier in a complex new game, if I don't know the why, it's hard for my brain to really take in what it is I'm doing, and therefore be able to duplicate it going forward. So after, like, when I played Oath, after that first round, I honestly was just like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing right now.
Yeah. Oh, I totally, and that was the feeling with Root as well. You got through those first 2 turns, like, oh, well, I know how to do those 2 things that I did on those 2 turns. I could continue to do that, but I also want to know why I did that instead of this. And why did this work out that way? And wait, how did these tokens work? And ended up having to look through a bunch more stuff. And so we came to a screeching halt in turn 3. So there is that danger. Kirk
go ahead.
Kirk is mentioning mechs versus minions, which is sort of back to the scenario version. I had written that down as well. You've got the simple rules, and you keep adding more and more complexity. But there is a certain amount of rule reading that has to happen before you even get into scenario 1.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point, is with these games, with more complex games, sometimes making mistakes is how you learn the game.
Yeah.
Like, now, admittedly, it can also ruin a game experience, and with these especially more complex games, that can be a detriment. But sometimes I like to learn by just trying things. Like, if I'm playing a game for the first time, assuming I've either read the rulebook or been taught basically the gist of everything, if I'm playing a game for the first time, I'm just going to try some stuff, and some of it'll work and some of it won't. And it'll, usually for me, I don't stress about winning, especially a first play of any game. And so I'll do a thing, and then a round later, I'll go, oh, I really shouldn't have done that. Yeah. But because I actively made the decision, I think my brain takes that information in better than if the game just said, you do this. Like, there's nothing for me to digest there, and so I feel like it doesn't stick as well.
Yeah, I think the walkthrough concept from Leader Games is in response to reviews of Vast, which was their game before Root, that had what, 5 different factions that all played very differently. Had almost different goals. Like you could play as the cave that was trying to collapse and trap the people inside.
The Crystal Cave,
yes,
I would
indeed.
like to clarify.
Yes, indeed.
I have played as the Crystal Cave and won Vast, and it was very fun to do.
But it did mean you had to basically relearn the game entirely based
every
on
time,
which character you were playing. And so I think this was an attempt to get people moving, get the momentum going. Even if you did have to look at a few things halfway through, you were still playing. And you could maybe look something up on somebody else's turn and just get the ball rolling earlier, which I think it succeeds at doing, even if it's a little bumpy halfway through.
And for the record, I do want to make it clear that, like, I love what Leader Games is doing with all of these games. Like, we're kind of, pointing out a couple of the flaws within these teaching systems, but I think games that have completely unique experiences for each player are special and rare in this hobby. And so I really appreciate the fact that Leader Games has taken learnings from their past titles and is trying to do new stuff with these different titles. So I just wanted to make that clear. I love their stuff. I don't want to sound like we're like, oh, this doesn't work at all. No, like it really is a way to make the games more approachable for sure.
Kabuki Kid brings up an interesting point that I had a question mark. I wrote down teaching guides ? Kabuki talks about the Fantasy Flight Games 2 manual system. Many of their games come with 2 rule books. One that is a learn to play rule set, and one that is more of an appendix or a complete rule set. And the idea being that for your first couple of games, you just look at the learn to play. It's still rules, but it is a more distilled, pared down set of rules that has a distinct flow to it. Do this, then do this, then do this. You need to know these 3 rules, and then you need to know this. It's sort of the flow of a turn. And it doesn't have as many edge cases, and it's just designed that way to get you into playing more quickly. But I don't know if that necessarily fits this. It's close. It's more of a around the edges of the self-teaching game.
That's true. So I only pulled one of them off the shelf. I didn't pull the other, but I have 2 examples of my favorite self-taught games. One of which I know you are a fan of, Eric, and that's the one I didn't pull off the shelf, and that's the Unlock series of escape room games.
Yes.
Every single Unlock comes with a small tutorial scenario that is not related to the scenario in the box, the main one, at all. It is about 10 cards usually, I think. And it teaches you the game's mechanisms in a tiny little short snippet of a footprint. It says, hey, you're going to have to look for hidden numbers, and you should look for a hidden number. And it's very clear and overt, and it helps bring you into the unlock system, which, especially for the early unlocks that kind of hadn't gone off the grid as much, was really beneficial, because it is, I think, better than throwing you into the main game and being like, just, you're on your own, good luck.
I had thought about escape room games in general as something that sort of does this, but I had totally blanked because I haven't played the tutorial scenario in so long.
Right.
That in every box of Unlock, you've got this little 10, 12 card thing, and it knows that it's giving you a couple of red herrings. I think one of the exit doors, it expects you to enter the code this way, and then it goes, that's not what you need to do. Pay attention to the colors or something like that.
Yeah. Like it really does a great job of introducing you to that system. And then the other favorite of mine personally is one of my heaviest boxes in my game collection because I have so many expansions in here, and that is Fog of Love. Fog of Love comes with, like, you literally, as you were saying earlier, Eric, you do not need to open the rulebook at all to learn how to play this game. It came with decks of cards that literally, it says, okay, you start with this card, go. and you read that card and it tells you, okay, draw this card from that deck. And then that card will tell you, do this, do that, draw this other card. And it, as you're going, teaches you each of the mechanisms of the game as you're playing it. But it doesn't just say, do this. It says, this is how this thing works, and then teaches it to you and has you do it. So I think of the systems that we've discussed, this one is my favorite. I really like it. And then the rulebook is also a good reference for this one as well, so I don't necessarily feel lost in the future when I'm playing Fog of Love, which is good.
Yeah, Fog of Love is unfortunately one that I let pass me by. I had a copy, and I just never could get it to the table. It's a very specific, it needs a particular audience. It's a 2-player only game. Those are very difficult for me to get to the table, especially for this. This isn't one that I wanted to play with my kids.
Yeah, no, there is definitely adult themed content in this game. And I also am very much
frozen for a second. You'll be back in a second. No, there you are.
Oh no.
You're back.
Oh gosh. Okay. The whole stream froze for a second, so it was all that's fun. I also am a proponent of telling people not to play Fog of Love with their significant other, because I think you're then for those of you who don't know what Fog of Love is, it is a relationship simulator. You are literally, to some degree, role-playing a romantic or not relationship between two people. And I think when you bring in the dynamic of a romantic relationship from outside of the game, it can make the game less enjoyable or more dramatic, and most people are probably not looking for that. But I played Fog of Love a whole bunch of times with one of my best friends and had a ball with it, so.
Yeah, I think I was maybe looking at it the wrong way, like I was trying to find the right time to play it with my wife, but really it's not. You almost need to treat it as a role-playing experience, and play it with someone that you trust, but not necessarily someone that has this direct relationship with you. And it's like I said, it's one that I sort of regret not following through on and getting to the table.
Well, I won't lie, Eric, if you and I are ever at a convention together, I think this would be a very funny one for you and I to play together. Eric Yurko and I actually, from What's Eric Playing, who does amazing written board game reviews. If you all are not familiar with Eric Yurko's work, go to what'sericplaying.com and read his fabulous reviews. But anyway, he is a friend of mine, and he and I talked about, like, years ago, going to a con and awkwardly playing this game in front of a crowd, like, and making it as ridiculous as possible, and we just never made it happen. So maybe I could, now I've got 2 Erics that I could theoretically do this with, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast. So
there you go. One other game I'm working my way toward the pinnacle of this concept, but I know
where you're headed, even though I've never played any of what you're headed toward.
I wanted to make one more stop, and that is the storybook games, adventure book games from Jerry Hawthorne. Comanauts and Mice and Mystics, and I guess Mice and Mystics isn't technically a storybook or adventure book game, but Stuffed Fables and Aftermath, which in the first couple of missions actually there is a certain amount of reading that needs to happen and set up an understanding of the rule book, but it has you starting from a story perspective pretty quickly, and it will pause at points in the first scenario that say, here is an important point that you need to know about line of sight, or you need to know about this rule. And some of them, I think the later games even have QR codes that you can look up a video, and it is intended to get you telling the story quickly, without having to get too mired in the depths of the rule book. All right, so the final stop on this trip, the ultimate self-teaching game, is the Fast Forward series from Freedom and Freeze. Flee is my favorite of the bunch. It's a cooperative version, but there's also Fortress, there's Fortune, there's Fear. There's a whole bunch of them. But so you got the box. Inside the box is a deck of cards. There's no rule book inside the box. It just says, first card in the deck, this is the top of the draw stack and the first card of the game. Find 1 to 4 players and place all cards face down on the table as a draw stack without peeking at the cards. the game begins. Select a player to read the text on the back of this card. So you start reading, you're presented with character cards, you deal out, they're all in order, and you start dealing it out. And you don't even really know what the goal of the game is yet until it presents it to you. And all of the games are a little bit different. There are some that are very traditional card games, trick-taking style games. This one's a cooperative. You're trying to prevent the Jabberwocky from being in front of you at the end of a round. And you are intended to fail and work your way through the deck and reset things. And there's rules for doing so. And more rules will be introduced as you play. And the experience of learning the game is part of the game with these things. I think these are brilliant. Not all of them work as well as I'd like, but as a concept, it's just so cool. So if you haven't had a chance to try one of these, I think it's certainly worth at least giving it a whirl.
So yeah, I've never played any of the Fast Forward series. What's the experience like coming back to it for additional plays? Is it a little bit like tedious when you kind of know how it's going to start, or?
Well, it depends on the game. It's
Okay.
sort of, if it's the same group of people that already knows what they're doing, there's usually rules for having reshuffled. At some point, you start shuffling the cards in the deck. You're no longer putting them in order. But it's designed for the teach to have it presented in a certain way. But at some point, you can just shuffle all the cards together and just play the full game. Once you know the whole game, you can just play it. You don't have to be introduced to the rules as you go, and then you're just shuffling the whole deck.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, no, I feel like at some point I should check that out for sure.
Yeah. So those are what I've got. You got probably at the highest level, you got the dual rule books that's at least acknowledge that the first play, the teaching play, is something separate from the base rule book, and then you've got the scenario-based tutorials. Do mission number 1, then do mission number 2, mission number 3. That has the diehard gamers going, no, just skip me to mission 7, please. Like Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle does this.
Oh, yeah.
It introduces very simple mechanics in the beginning in the first book, and then it gets more complex. But then there's a little note that says, if you already know what you're doing with deck building and you've played a lot of games, just start with mission 3, because the first 2 are you're gonna be a little bored. But at that point you can kick in. So you got that, and then the walkthrough that holds your hand, at least for the first couple of turns, and then the full fast forward. The game is simply going to teach you. We didn't even include a rule book in the box.
Absolutely. And something that people brought up on Twitter that I wanted to shout out is everything we've talked about so far is baked into the original game in some form. But something that's pretty neat is Wingspan originally was published like a normal board game with no tutorial per se. And then later editions of Wingspan have been released with a Swift Start pack that will help get you into the game faster. And a whole bunch of people on Twitter were praising the Swift Start pack. And I think especially because Wingspan kind of blew up and got into or out of the hobby gaming space and into the mass market a little bit more than a lot of hobby games do, that feels like a really neat addition to those later editions of the game, because obviously non-hobby gamers won't grok the concepts in Wingspan as quickly as hobby gamers will. And so getting them a little bit closer to understanding it more quickly, I think, is really smart. And I would love to see other games add in things like that, especially if they're printed additional times. Like, take the learnings from the first edition of a game and say, hey, let's make this more approachable, especially as games start to reach the mass market more often, which they definitely are. If you look at the shelves of a Target, there's so many games there now.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And I worry a little bit about, somebody picking up one of the heavier titles. So it's good to hear. I didn't know that about Wingspan until we began this discussion, because I've got one of the earlier
I
printings.
do. Yeah, I do as well. I don't have the Swift Start.
So that is very cool to know that is an option for new players. Kabuki Kid mentions that the new edition of Robinson Crusoe is going to have that sort of Jaws of the Lion style entry scenario that's going to lead people a little more gently into the world of Robinson, which is probably good because that game is hard. I've
I was
never
gonna say, is it gonna prepare them to lose? Because that's what happens when you play Robinson Crusoe.
never won that game.
Oh, I've never won it either. So yeah.
A few folks bringing up other games. Fine Sand, Coralu brings that up in chat, which is another Freedom and Freeze game that is technically a fast forward. That's what they call or a fable. Is it? One of them's fast forward. The one series is fast forward. I think that's this series with the self-teaching deck. But a fable deck is also a system that Freeze has been using. For games like Fine Sand and the one about the juice, Fabled Fruit. That's it.
Yeah.
But Fine Sand is a
So many F's.
it is. Well,
Friedman.
Friedman is.
Yeah.
He's all about the F's. It has a pre-sorted deck at the beginning of the game that aids in the tutorial. They actually tell you put all your cards, your deck cards in order so that you have one of each card in the initial draw, and so it makes it easier to teach all of the mechanisms. And I made the boneheaded decision, forgot all about this fact, that the initial deck is sorted. And I was walking around the Dice Tower Cruise and saw some folks getting ready to play the game, and I'm like, oh, what? Are you? Would you like someone to help teach? I know the game really well. I love it. And they're like, yeah, sure. And I picked up somebody's deck and I started shuffling it. And I'm trying to talk, and their eyes got wide. They're like, it told us to put them all in order. And I totally, like, they all like bristled. They're like, what are you doing? That is not what it told us to do. And I'm like, oh, you're playing the intro scenario. Oh, man. And I felt really bad.
Oh.
Because I just totally messed up. And the guy was like, fine, I'll sort it again.
Oh. It's one of those situations where everybody knows that the intentions were good, but you still have to sort cards now.
I felt really bad. Anyway, that's another lovely example of a presentation of the initial hand of cards in not Fabled Fruit, in Fine Sand, the sandcastle building game.
Well, we've got a few minutes left. That was a really good discussion. I'm glad the chat threw in some ideas there. But since we do have a few minutes left, chat, if you have any questions for Eric or myself, whether they are about self-teaching games, other board games, or anything, please feel free to throw them at us. And while you're doing that, I wanted to give an update, Eric, because during our last episode, or maybe a recent episode, was it the last one? I talked about how I was hoping to play Magic Calligraphy.
Yeah, you showed it off.
I was like, do I have to put ink in this thing? No. No ink. The little inkwell you fill with water. And then the paper that's in the bottom of this box is water reactive. So when you draw with the quill, it makes the paper wet, which makes the color show up, and then as soon as it dries, it's gone. So there's 2 pieces of the water reactive paper in the game. I only played it. We didn't actually play the game per se. We just kind of got out all the components and played around with it because it was just me and my friend Kathy. But holy cow, just the 2 of us, with each of us holding 2 of the rings, controlling the feather. It was so neat and so unique. I was just really happy about it. Yeah. Also, I recently played what is now my second favorite escape room game of all time.
Okay.
Which, I mean, I guess I could talk about it more in depth in our next episode if people are curious, but hands down, this is now number 2 on my list of all time. It will not be the Werewolf Experiment, Escape Room in a Box, the Werewolf Experiment. That is my number 1 and probably always will be. But this is number 2 by far. It's a Coded Chronicles game from the Op, Scooby-Doo Escape from the Haunted Mansion. If you all have not heard of this, I highly recommend it. If you want to hear me talk about it more in our next episode, let me know. I'd be happy to share thoughts. Okay.
Yeah.
It was tough. Kathy came over for like 6 hours this past weekend. We hadn't seen each other in a long time because we've been very, very safe with COVID stuff and all that. She came over and we played so many games, and it was just wonderful.
That is one I saw the press release go by, and I said, "Yeah, I want to play that." But I haven't had a chance to either track down a copy at the local game store or bug the op to send one. Occasionally, I'm able to make that happen, but not always.
Right.
But that might be one to worth.
Especially
to
with the
look at.
larger companies, sometimes it's harder to even find somebody to get in touch with.
Yep.
Yes, Hornus makes a good point. There are 2 other Coded Chronicles games. One is the Shining themed, which I really want to play. And yeah, there's a new one that's Goonies themed coming as well.
Yes.
And I want both of those desperately after having played the Scooby-Doo one. Oh my gosh, I want to talk about Scooby-Doo now. I'm not going to do it. I'm gonna wait and see if y'all want to hear about it next time. But yeah, I'll just say it's real good, and it does some very unique things that most escape room games do not do.
Cool. DJ Dan's asking, what opportunities have we had to play games with real people? Have we done game nights with friends? Have we been able to make it to game groups? And what kind of games do your groups tend to enjoy?
So I have not met back up in public with any gaming groups since the pandemic began. There was, when the COVID numbers went down in the spring and early summer, I did have a few people from my game group who I've become friends with over the years come over to my house, and we gamed for a few weeks, and then COVID numbers started rising again, and we kind of cut that back off. So I have not been gaming in person with very many people. My friend Kathy does come over occasionally. We just play 2-player games. My game group pre-pandemic was very much a fan of new games. We were always learning and trying and playing new games. But for the most part right now, I'm actually hosting online game nights every Tuesday evening and Saturday evening in my podcast's Discord channel. And the Tuesday evening one is live streamed. Like I stream on Twitch while we're playing games, but the Saturday night one is not streamed. It's private. But anybody who's in my Discord can come play games. And I have a lot of fun. Other people say they have a lot of fun as well. We've gotten upwards of, like within a single night, 20 people probably coming by, usually not all at once. But if anyone out there is missing gaming with people and wants to do some online gaming, and needs some friends to do that with, please feel free to hit me up and I will send you a link to my Discord, and I would love to have you join us. We play board games on Board Game Arena. We do Jackbox games, and some other random stuff like the Tic Tac Together game that I taught you all during our last episode.
Yes.
So
I've been able to get together on occasion with small groups in the home. My game group where I used to be closer to in my old house is at someone's house. And so once the entire group was vaccinated, we waited until that point came. We started getting together again, and I've been able to make it down maybe about once a month. It's about an hour away now, so it's a trickier drive for me to get through. But I have been able to also do small sessions with Brant, who's in the chat right now, at the friendly local gaming store, the Portal in Manchester, and have been able to get together for an afternoon for a couple hours and look at some new games. So mostly new games with Brant. My game group down in Southern Connecticut has a good mix. Like, I'm usually bringing new stuff. There's another guy who backs a lot of Kickstarters, so he's often bringing new stuff. But also the group likes to go back to the back shelves and pick out old favorites. And so the same games do tend to come out multiple weeks in a row, and then we sprinkle in the new stuff too. So I like it. It's a good mix. We take turns just determining who is going to choose what gets played. So some people who like the older stuff, I want to play something I know already, will bring that out when it's their turn to pick, and then I'm going, well, I've got these 4 games I need to review, so let's do this one. And we're learning rules when it's my turn to pick something.
awesome.
Let's see. There was Brant, in fact, asked, what is our favorite game of 2021 so far? I know.
Oh gosh.
I have not. I don't usually do this till the end of the year. I like to go back and, look at the whole list. This is much more of a process. I don't keep a running total as I go. I will say that the loop that we talked about earlier in the show has a good chance of being high on that list. I really, really enjoyed this one, and it just has a quirk that I really sort of connect with. So that one will definitely be in the high. It's probably going to make a top 10 for me. But as far as other ones, I need to do the math. Basically, I have to make the list and pick out stuff that has worked for me and stuff that hasn't.
I literally just pulled up on. I did a very quick advanced search on BGG of 2021 releases by rank, and just glancing at like the first page, there are a bunch of things on there that I have played and liked, but some of which I haven't played a lot of. Like, I still only have played Destinies one time, but that one play kind of blew my mind. So I'm thinking something like Destinies could be up there, but it's hard for me to say that after a single play. And then there's other things in this list that might have shown up at my house this past week that I impulse bought and haven't opened the shrink on yet, like Descent Legends of the Dark, for instance.
Oh, that's quite the impulse buy.
Yeah, it was only $137 on GameNerds.com. And
only?
So, I know,
what
and
a deal.
compared to the retail price, that's...
Boy.
This is instead of spending money on travel, because obviously I'm not traveling anywhere, apparently I'm diverting that money to board games. I haven't taken the shrink off yet. I don't know how soon that one will get played, but I know it can be played solo. So
yep, I've bought a lot of games that I think I'm going to play solo that I still haven't made that happen. I still am holding out hope that I have a game room by the end of the year.
Yeah, my table is not coming. Like, Wormwood, to their credit, has been very transparent about their process, but I'm not getting my table before the end of the year, I don't think.
I actually asked for an update on my Rathskellers, and I know that there's all of this is ranges. I'm just like, are we looking at 1 to 2 months? Are we looking at 4 to 6 months? Where are we? And they're like, I think probably 3 to 4 months right now. Maybe December, January, probably more likely is what we're looking at.
So then, in your head, plan for February, and then hopefully get pleasantly surprised is what that all boils down to.
Yes, indeed. Brant mentions another of my favorites from 2021. That is Meadow. Lovely little game. Very cool card drafting, tableau building game with some really cool, subtle mechanisms. I like it a lot. So thank you for the reminder, Brant.
And shoot, it is entirely possible that my copy of Return to Dark Tower will be in my hands before the end of this year. And so I've played that game now 3 times in the course of its development. At some points, it has changed since I've played it. But based on the plays of that game that I have already had, I think it is also poised to not only be one of my top games of the year, but of all time. So
yeah,
we'll see when that one gets shipped. It sounds like it's likely coming in December based on what they've been projecting. So we'll see. I'm stoked to get my own copy of that one.
Yes, I am as well. I want to light up that tower and start throwing skulls into it, and just I got to get the kids into it because I think they'll really like it if we can make it go. The original was a game that my cousin had, and I begged him to let me play it. Please, can we play this Dark Tower game that I saw in your closet when I'd go and visit? And he's like, no, you're not old enough. No, you're not old enough. And finally, he's like, fine, we'll play the game. And I got to play it, and I saw it lighting up and making its whirring sounds and beater. And so it's a cool memory for me, and I'm hoping that it does something similar for my boys. Coralu awesome. Mentions that, yes, hasn't it been about a year since I moved? We're getting there. November. Late November was when I moved, and so we're approaching a year. And yes, the game room is still not finished.
This is actually this coming week is my 1-year anniversary of me moving into my new house.
Okay,
so I've been here a year now.
How's your game room coming?
I mean, I have the shelves, right, and I have the old folding poker table that I've had forever. The big cylindrical or not oblong,
the oval shaped.
Yeah, the oval
table.
thing. that I've had forever. But yeah, no, the chairs are just folding chairs, and there's nothing else fancy in regard to lighting. Because really, like, I'm just like, why do I want to put time and effort into a thing when I'm not even having people
Right.
over to use it?
The
And
pressure isn't quite there. Yeah.
well, and if I don't, like, until I get the table, I feel like I don't want to do other things with the space, because admittedly, my dining room is not huge. And so I'm scared that things aren't going to fit the way I want them to.
Yeah, I did move a little bit on the project in the last week or two, and I bought a couple of test chairs. So I'd been researching what chairs I want, and I found we want dining room style chairs. I was thinking of an upholstery and dark color legs because that's going to match the table. And so I found a few online and ordered a pair because I couldn't sit in the chairs online. And just thinking, if I don't like them, then they'll end up as like office chairs for the kids. They'll be like their desk chair for doing homework. And put them together, and they looked really nice. They're like this gray upholstery and nice dark wood legs, and they look like they'd really fit in the aesthetic of the room. But then we sat in them, and they were just a little harder than we wanted, not quite cushy enough, and really narrow. And my wife and I are like, it's not going to be comfortable to sit in this for several hours at a time. And so they got relegated to the kids. It was only, I think they were like $40 each. So I wanted them to work out because it was going to be a great, inexpensive option if to order 8 more. But that didn't happen. So I'm sort of back to square one. I know what I want them to look like, but I also know what I want them to feel like, and these ones weren't that.
Oh yeah, no, the older I get, the more I'm very much like, give me the cushiest seat possible. I want something comfy.
Well, I think I told you I was actually considering getting casino chairs.
Yeah.
But those all end up looking just a little too industrial. Like they look like casino chairs, and I don't want them to look like casino chairs. I just want really comfortable chairs.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're back to that project, and it might come down to when the table comes, then I will get something that fits the table. But until that actually happens, I can't do a whole lot of shopping.
Yep. All right, Eric. Well, it is about that time. I think we should probably head off. But as always, the chat has been absolutely lovely this evening.
They have. They're always lovely.
Y'all are just the best, always. And we really appreciate you hanging out with us while we're here. For those of you who are new, which I know there was at least one person in the chat, and now I've forgotten your name, Ryan, I think. It was a person named Ryan. I want to give you a shout out.
Etienne as well in the chat.
Yes. Thank you all for joining us. We are here every 2 weeks on Wednesday evenings at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. So our next episode will be on October 13th.
Mid-October.
This year, I can't even. No doggo report. Well, Lana's back behind me right now. I don't know. Hi, can you say?
Crystal fed the dogs before the show tonight, so we don't have the commentary that we had a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, you don't have Lana behind me. Yeah, she's back there laying on the dog bed right now, very happy because she has a full belly, but the doggos are doing great, and they'll be back along with Eric and I in 2 weeks on October 13th.
Indeed.
So until then, I'm Crystal Dax.
I'm Eric Summerer.
And you've been watching Dice Tower Tonight.
Thank you for watching both live and pre-recorded. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. Crystal and I will see you in 2 weeks for another installment. Our show is supported by viewers like you. Thank you. Dice Tower Tonight is produced by Crystal and me with assistance from Tom Vassell, Mike DeLisio, Roy Canaday, Chris Yee, and Rob Searing. That underaged kid who loves polyhedrals provided by Dice Miner. Timothy Pinkham composed our theme, and hosting is provided by GameNerds.com. Give us your feedback on the Dice Tower Guild at Board Game Geek, on Facebook or Twitter, or by emailing us at crystal@dicetower.com or eric@dicetower.com. You can hear more from Crystal on the Board Game Blitz podcast, and I can be found giving Tom a hard time on the Dice Tower. Find those shows and more at dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all of us at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming.
gaming.
Good night, everybody. Give that thumbs up.